Welcome back, everyone. This is Happy Human with Sense of Life Games, and I am here today to give you guys another update on the status of my project here, my video game, which is called Vanderbuild, which I gave you guys a preview about 2 weeks ago again. So, what we've got to show off here today is 2 weeks of progress here, and the big change from last time is that you can actually go to sleep now as the player. So, one of the games that I've enjoyed playing a lot over the last several years, maybe 4 or 5 years, is Stardew Valley. Definitely a big indie game hit. And I really love the day and night mechanism that is built into that game, where the overnight times when you go to sleep, those are the save points of the game. There's a lot that I enjoy about that, really. I enjoy the drama caused by not having a save point always immediately available to you. I think that makes the day mechanic really interesting, and it leads to choices in the play experience that have some consequences that you can't just kind of save your game before, make a choice, and then reload if it doesn't quite go the way that you want to. So one change from last time that you saw it is that the player's house here, this very plain, ugly blue rectangle, now has a door in it and this little kind of glowing, or at least semi-transparent little zone in front of it. So if I walk into that, you'll see that the game asks me if I want to go to sleep. Other couple change that you might see is at the bottom left corner of your screen, of the screen here, it shows what current day it is. So again, kind of a very Stardew Valley kind of concept of tracking the days here. But let's go to sleep here, and you'll see that got a very nice fade out to black effect. And I thought it would be interesting here to at least track some kind of basic statistics of what you've done over the day. So what I've built in right now is just a little um, screen that tells you how far you sailed, how far you walked, and any money that you earned over that day. And so now that I sleep, I come back in, and you can see now at the bottom it is day two, and the sun is rising right in front of us. So let me just talk a little bit about there were an awful lot of bugs to work out once I started working on this sleep mechanism. I'd been using kind of the Unity editor here to set the initial state of the game, and getting it back to that initial state, or at least an initial state, there were an awful lot of bugs to work out there at the beginning of the day. So after you sleep, and then kind of going through the code, the scripts, and resetting the game state all to that original part so that it looked the same as when you initially start the game and when you wake up on day two. That actually took quite a lot of work. Um, Other changes that are kind of in the background here was I had to implement a clock to kind of keep track of what the exact game time is during the day. Before, I was keeping that just as a float from 0 to 1, 0 kind of being, the instant after midnight, and 1 being midnight, so the start of the day to the end of the day. And I was using that to move the sun. So as you look at the sun there, it's slowly moving across. So that is that float time tracker that's keeping track of, or telling the sun where to move. But I did need to translate that into regular game terms. Because one of the effects also that I like in Stardew Valley is the effect of staying up too late. If you stay up past 2 o'clock in the morning, then you automatically fall asleep, and there's usually bad consequences to that depending on where you are in the game. And so to keep that kind of similar mechanic here, or at least something that's going to be like it here, I needed to implement a clock in the background and then put that into effect so that you can fall asleep too late. In fact, I think I can show that to you guys here. If I really quick exit out of the game and bear with me here for a little bit while I change this up here, and I'm gonna play again, jump back in, and you'll see, oh, sun goes much, much, much faster this time. In fact, this time while I'm talking, we can probably watch the sunset here. If you see my shadow growing, you can see that it's coming down. So in a minute or two here, we're going to get a message that we have stayed up too late, and it will actually probably quicker than I gave it credit for. Here we will see a fade to black, and my player will automatically fall asleep. And there we go. All right, and we get a message saying that you stayed up too late. Obviously, that's pretty basic at this point, but we get the summary message, and then again, we get to wake up at the next day, and we go back to super, super fast kind of motion here on the sun. So let me also talk a little bit about another change that this day tracking had. Is it really had a big change on how I process the contracts or the jobs that a player takes on for the NPCs. So this is, if you remember from the last video, I reached an agreement with one of these NPCs to haul some lumber over to Manhattan for him, put it on the boat, sail it over to Manhattan, drop it off, and earn money. Pretty simple. But what this had, or what I wanted to add here, was a time limit on here. So you can see that this is saying that if we get this lumber by tomorrow. Well, okay, so then that took quite a bit of work actually to get that contract to say, oh, that is actually due by tomorrow. You'll see that this one is saying that if we can get the letter taken to Manhattan before 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 1400, then they'll pay us money. If we're not, then the contract is failed. And this was really quite, it took a lot of work to make that happen, because before I had done any of this work, I was using these what I call contracting NPCs. So these little red pawns, red pylons over here, these are the guys that actually offer you the jobs. And they were the only ones that knew about the job. So they kind of had, I used the serialized fields in the Unity editor to say, what the text is that they were going to spit out, how much they would pay you, and that kind of stuff. And then over on Manhattan, there's another set of these red guys that are the reward NPCs. So they offer you payment when you bring them the goods that they're looking for. And all that I had that in Unity, it was super simple. Those reward NPCs had a reference back to these contracting NPCs. And then the contracting NPCs are actually the ones that knew everything about the contract. So everything was kind of stored in their heads. And in order to get these time frames in point so that it could last more than one day, what I had to do was refactor a lot of code to create a contract container class that holds all of the contracts. And then all of these NPCs, all of these pylons reference those contracts in that contract manager. And that let me do a lot of things, like have all of those contracts live as independent things, independent of the actual NPCs that were either offering them or giving you rewards for completing them. And that let me have those contracts listen for time changes throughout the day as the game clock updates. Each of those contracts gets notified each time that clock goes to a new time, so they can figure out, oh, is this past my deadline? Is this past 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Then this contract is failed. Or maybe an NPC only offers this job for a day or two, but after, on day 3, then this NPC no longer has any jobs to offer. All of that kind of stuff was driven by changing where in the code those contracts are managed, where they're contained, and kind of how they're controlled there. So that actually took quite a bit of work. So I know sometimes this stuff doesn't result in a lot of visual changes, but it is a lot of work. So that is what I wanted to show you guys this update. And let me talk a little bit here before I wrap up about where the next update is going to be going. So unfortunately, I'm not going to have a whole lot of time to work on my project here over the next 2 weeks. There are the area that I'm probably going to work, because I don't have a lot of time on it, is just adding a basic menu structure here to the game so that when you launch the game, you come up to a main menu and you can choose a new game, and then you can exit the game. I mean, right now, outside of playing it in Unity, there's no way to exit the game once you're in it, which wouldn't be very good for the player experience. And then once the game is over, probably just for this early, I'm going to set some sort of timer on days, maybe call it like, you give the player 5 days to get as much money and walk as far or sail as far as they possibly can. And just after 5 days, the game is over and you go back to kind of the main menu. Um, so that stuff probably won't be too much work. That should be work that I can get done in the next update here, which I hope to show you guys in 2 weeks. And then also two other points that I wanted to talk about is yes, the graphics are still ugly. That much is very obvious and very clear. I want to talk more about that in the update in 2 weeks from now. Talk about why I'm working on other things instead of the graphics. And kind of related to that is that the game, although I've added this kind of day mechanic and that things, it's still not very fun when you're actually sailing. So if I go over and jump into my boat and oops, a little too far, and take off and head over to Manhattan here. Well, this is still kind of there's no other good word for it other than boring when you're sailing over to Manhattan. So one of the other items that I plan on doing a lot of work over these next 2 weeks is thinking about ways that I can start to make this a lot more fun and a lot more engaging of a process while you're sailing around. So I've got some ideas on that. But if you're watching this and you've got some ideas on things that can make this more fun or ideas that I can learn from other games, those suggestions are, of course, very, very welcome. So thank you guys for watching this. I appreciate the attention and the views, and I hope you guys enjoy listening to my journey here. Once again, this is Happy Human with Sense of Life Games, and this is the Project Vanderbuild. Thank you very much. I will see you guys next time.